Hello my crafty friends, it's Beverleigh here over at Crafty Chaos with the next in the series of critter cards. It's been a while and the next one we're going to make is this one, which is a cute Dachshund for those who like your sausage dogs. I know my sister-in-law used to have a sausage dog, unfortunately it's since passed away, but I did make this card for her a few years ago and she actually loved it. So what we're going to do is create the dog file, and if anybody who watched my creating the long neck giraffe will recognise the concept, because it's the same sort of idea. It folds down to make a shorter dog, and then as you concertina the card open, it makes this long sausage dog or a dachshund, whichever you prefer. Okay, so that's the card we're going to make. And let's get started. So I'm going to start by moving some of these pieces off to the side. So we've just got the dog there for reference, and also the matting layers. So we're going to move them off to the other side so that we know what we're aiming for. Okay, just bear with and we'll get starting as soon as possible. So as you can see, that for the base card is actually 5 by 11. So we're going to use the properties box, untick the maintain aspect ratio and make it 5 by 11 inches. Okay, so that's the length of the card. We then need to split that card in half down the middle. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring on another, in fact we can duplicate this one because it's already on, so we'll duplicate that one and we'll just resize this side down to half that amount, which is 5.5 inches, and we'll say OK. Then we're going to select both of the shapes and we're going to line them up with the right hand side and the tops. So now this little rectangle or square, which I'm just vaguely just about a rectangle because it's not quite 5 by 5, it's 5.5, is exactly, that line there is exactly 5.5 inches away from this end here, which means that's exactly halfway, scoring halfway, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to click again, I'm going to click minus because what I'm wanting to do is make a score line. So I'm going to take out, I'll just go back a step because I didn't quite explain that, so just redo it till we get it sized up. So there it is in the middle. Then I click again to expose the nodes, and then if we just move this out of the way, we need to minus that one, which will open the nodes, and then click on this one at the top, again minus, and that leaves us just the line at the center. I'm going to zoom in a little so that I can actually click on that line. I'm going to click off, click on the selection tool, click on the center line, and if you're struggling, zoom in even more till you get the actual line, and you'll notice the line because you'll just see that bit in the middle highlighted. I'm going to make it a cutting line and a dashed line, and then I'm going to use that one. Okay, so I'm going to view fit to mat, and then I'm going to score it, and I'm going to group them. That means that that scoring line is staying put and going nowhere. So the next thing we want to do is we need, remember these panels now from there and there and there to there is going to be 5.5. So what I need to do is bring on a basic shape, a square, and we want that square to be, in fact I'm just going to save. Now if this happens, when I click on that, some of my functions are missing from this properties, and I don't know if anybody else experiences this issue, but I experience it on a regular basis. And if this happens, all I do is save my project, so I'm going to call it sausage dog and click the save button and then say OK. And then if I refresh by doing this here, it'll refresh the page and it'll come back at the point where I've just saved it. And then usually when I do this, what I find is the buttons that weren't working properly suddenly start functioning again. Now, I have no idea why it does this, but it just seems to do it from time to time. Okay, so now the buttons that weren't working should now be functioning, and they seem to be. So everything seems to be working as it should now. So the sizing gauge is there. So now we need to make it 5.5. 5. We'll start at 5, and we want it to say be 5.5. So remember, that's going to be, but we need to take out the aspect ratio, because remember, when it does that, it also refreshes that and puts the tick back in. So that exactly fits on that bit there. But we need it to be half that amount. So half of 5.5 is 2.75. So I'm going to change that to 2.75 and say OK. Now that is exactly half of this panel here. And that's what we're going to use to make the second scoring mark. So we need to select the big rectangle that's the base card and the rectangle that we've just created. And we're going to go to Edit, Align at the top, and Edit, Align to the left. Okay, so now it's lined up at this side and the top, and that line there is exactly halfway between the end and the centre. So I'm going to click on once more to expose the nodes, click on minus that node, click on, so if it does that, just click on it again and click to expose the nodes. Make sure you get the right one selected. If it does it wrong, just undo. If you get the wrong node, it does happen. It's not always as obvious which ones are the right ones to be clicking to get that line on its own, but when you do get the line on its own, it will look like that. Zoom in and make sure you click on the selection tool, select the line you've just made, make it a cutting line and also a perforating line. So if we zoom back out, so we'll go for view fit to matte, we've now got our base card, which I can now edit and group those all together. So now that's created the base card like so. So if you think about it, that one will be at 5, and for some reason I've got it to 5.0, so I'm just going to make it 5 exactly. So it's 5 exactly high, or it should be. It doesn't want to stay at 5, but I don't really think that 0.01's going to make any difference. So we're on 5 there, so it's going to be 5 by 5.5. So if we want some matting layers for that, we need to think about what we want. So we want one that is slightly smaller than 5 by 5.5 for that first panel. So if I click on and bring on a basic shape, the square, we've got the maintain aspect ratio clicked. And if we make it the dimensions that are exact, first of all, like so, that will fit exactly in that panel there. But obviously for a matting layer, we want it to be slightly smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock off, what kind of border shall we have, 1/4 inch? So 1/2 inch both sides, so 4.5 and 5, and resize. So now that should be the perfect matting layer for in that square there. And if you look, it is. If that was lined up properly when you do your sticking job, it's going to be perfect. Okay, so now we need a similar layer for that one. So I'm just going to duplicate the one we've made because we know that's the right height. We know that that was 2.75. So if we make it 2.75 initially, so that's the right width to fit in there exactly. And we want that to be 1/2 inch less. So 1/2 inch less would be 2.5. And click OK. And now that should be the perfect matting layer for that panel. Then obviously you need 2 of those, so you would click on and click off, duplicate it, and there you've got your base card made. Okay, so that's the base card. So that's how you'd go about doing that one. Now, as I've already got it done and saved, I'm just going to delete that so I've got space. Okay, so the next thing to work on is the Dachshund itself. So the first thing we're going to do is make the Dachshund's body, and I will be needing to use my resizing options quite a bit here. So I'm going to click on not a square, we want a rounded rectangle for our sausage dog, and we want to make that 1 point, this is for the larger part of the body, so this bit, 1.13 and we want it to be 7.84 long. So that's the sausage dog body. Then the smaller body, the one that goes underneath, we're going to click onto the space, click onto the shape, hit D on your keyboard, and we're going to resize that down to 7.38, but the width stays the same. Okay, so that's that one. So one of those fits under the other, just to give you that different colour. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the sausage dogs. So what you would do with that one, once you've made that smaller one, you could leave it just full and mat it behind. So if I put some colour in, you can see the difference in colour. So we'll do that now. I'm going to put the darker one behind, edit send to the back. So that's how our body will be looking. Okay, so that's the body. So next we need the legs. So again, we're bringing on a rounded rectangle, and we're going to resize them to 1.31 by 0.58. Now these are just the dimensions that I feel have worked for me. So I'm going to bring that down, click off onto the white space, click onto the shape again, hit D on my keyboard to duplicate, move that along for the back leg. I'm going to select both so that I can put some colour into both ones together. Okay, so that's the 2 back legs completed. Okay, so now I'm going to duplicate that for the dog's neck, and I'm going to rotate by 340 degrees, like so, and that will form the dog's head. You don't have to do the rotation, I'm just doing it so that you can see how the shape's building on the actual screen. Okay, so next we're going to do the dog's head. So for this we need a teardrop shape, so that's this shape, and we're going to resize it by 2.26 by 1.47 inches. Okay, so this is for the dog's head. Then we're going to rotate it so that it is actually the right size for the head, the right angle for the dog's head, and just you play around with it if you want on the thing, although your exact position will come when you do your own dog. So you position your own dog. So there's our dog's head. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to change it to a different colour, and that's going to go, one goes underneath the other. So I'm going to send that one down to the back and rotate it slightly, so we've got that two-toned effect for the dog's head. Okay, so then I'm going to take that one once more. I'm going to hit D on my keyboard to duplicate that one, and I'm going to just set that back to 0 so that it's straight. Then I'm going to take a square, basic shape as a square, and I'm going to use that square to cut that shape in half. So edit and process the overlap and subtract. And that's going to leave me that shape, which is this part here, which I can now rotate freely using the freely, like so. And that's going to fit down here. Now obviously it's the same size at the minute, so what we need to do is just grab one of the corners and shrink it in just a little bit so that now we have it slightly smaller and we can get the angle as we stick that down onto our project, like so. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is the dog's nose. So for this we need a circle, and we are going to resize the nose to, it's almost a circle, 0.56 by 0.61. Not 2, 1. Okay, so that's going to be, I'm going to make it black so we can see that that's the dog's nose, and it fits at the end of the dog's snout like so. I'm just going to move that neck up a little bit, and I'm going to send it right to the back so it's behind the body and I'm going to move the head down a little bit like so. That's just for my reckoning. If I think that the heads might be maybe a little bit too small, I can select all of the parts, group them and resize them as you see fit. I'm just thinking I could do with that being a little bit bigger for my preferences, so I'm just going to group everything initially, just grow it just a little bit so I'm happier with the size, and then ungroup. So now I think that head looks a bit better. Okay, so if we come along here, we can now see that this dog's tail is that what we're going to work with shortly. So we need for the tail to grab ourselves an oval shape. So we want an oval. So we're going to click on the basic shapes for an oval. And we're going to resize that oval to 1.65. And again, now we've got that issue again where it's not giving us the size here. So again, just do a save. Make sure you've saved your project. Say OK, and then do a quick refresh. Wait for it to refresh, and then when we click on the properties, the size should have come back. Like I said, I have no idea why it does this, but it does. So if this happens to you, that's the fix I suggest. It's probably a glitch in the software that just needs fixing with an update. So the oval's going to be 1.65 by 1.23. Say OK, and I'm going to duplicate that by clicking off, clicking on and hitting D, overlapping slightly that one on top with the one underneath. Then I'm going to edit, process the overlap and subtract, and then that's give us the dog shape tail. If you want to resize it to the size that you like, that's up to you. And again, that's going to go there. And we will resize it. I'm going to duplicate it, put some different colour into that one, and just slightly overlap one with the other so that it looks like it's got a two coloured tail. So I'm just going to group them initially. I'll send them to the back so you get the idea, and then I'm going to select them and ungroup them because we want to cut them out to two different colours. So once they're grouped, we're going to send them to the back. Seems to be playing up a little bit today. I'll try it once more. I'm going to see if they're still grouped. Edit, send to the very back. Edit, ungroup. Okay. So that's the tail. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to do is the dog's eye. So again, we need a circle for this, or roughly a circle. So I'm just going to duplicate the nose. And we really need to resize this part for the whites of the eye to 0.56. So 0.56 by 0.61. So 0.61. Okay. So that will be for the whites of the eyes. So we're going to make that white. And we know it's the whites. We need 2 of those, so duplicate, put them towards the top of the dog's head. Okay, duplicate that one. Oops, if you do that, just always can go back using the undo arrow. We're going to resize for the pupil to 0.34 by 0.36. Like so. And then we're going to make it black. And we need click on, click off 2 of those. So again, put the dog's pupils in position on the dog. Like so. And obviously, it's only roughly because you're just going to make those stick down wherever you want to when you make your actual project. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to work on the dog's paws. So for the paws, what we need to do is get ourselves a circle. So we're going to get this one again, going to hit duplicate, so I've got another one. I'm going to position it down at the bottom, going to resize it till it's slightly bigger than the bottom of the leg, and that's coming out at 0.8 by 0.87. I'm going to click off, get myself a shape to cut it in half with. So I'm going to use a basic shape, square. I'm going to roughly cut it in half, it doesn't have to be spot on. And we're going to edit, when we've got them both selected, that is, I don't know what's happened there, just undo that. Select both and edit, subtract, process the overlap and subtract. Actually, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger by doing it an offset. So edit and process the overlap. I'm happier with that sizing. So I'm going to duplicate that so I've got one for each foot. And again, we're going to make those light. This time I think the lighter colour. Okay, and we're going to duplicate that and we're going to shrink it down a bit to 0.46 by 0.73, and I'm going to duplicate it. We're going to turn that to the darker colour and position that so we've got that two-tone effect. See, just gives your dog that little bit of added dimension. Okay, so you can choose to do that step or leave it out, it's up to you. Finally, we're going to work on the dog's ears, which are starting out as a teardrop. So again, we're going to scroll down to that teardrop shape and bring it on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to click again to expose the nodes. I'm going to drag, between those two nodes, I'm going to add a node by using this add a node button. And that will enable me to sort of play around a little bit and drag one in so I get a more of an ear shape, like so. Okay, so once I'm happy with that, I'm going to resize that to the size that I'm happy with. I'm going to rotate it freely. Let's bring that in, see what it's looking like. So no two ears are going to be exactly the same, but you get the idea. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to flip on the vertical axis, sorry, so I can get it in at the other side. Just going to move that out of the way so I can rotate it up a little. So that will be the one at the back, and that's that one. And we're going to make those two ears the darker colour, just for argument's sake, and we're going to group them initially whilst I send them to the very back. and then we're going to ungroup. I'm then going to select one again. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to slightly size that down a little, change the colour, fit that on. That's going to go form the second part of that one, the inner ear if you will, so the bit that you can see inside. And then I'm going to make that a little bit shorter, select all that, move it down. That's it, that's better. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same, duplicate that one, edit, flip on the vertical axes, and obviously you can just play around with the rotation till you're happy with it. But obviously this is what you'll be doing when you stick it in. Okay, so I'm just going to select both for now, temporarily group them, and then send them to the, not to the very back, I need to bring them back one layer now so that they're sitting on top of the dog's ears. Okay, so that's more or less, if you think you want the dog's body a little fatter, you can always increase the size now. Now, as you can see, if I zoom in on my original dog, I've done some forced stitching on there. Now, you may choose to do or choose not to do. You could do as an alternative inking around the edges, but if you did want to do the forced stitching, what you would do is you would click on each shape, and I'm not going to do them all, I'm just going to do one, do the create an offset, and we want it to be inward and rounded, and we want it to be about 0.8, we will say OK. That will have the inner one now selected, so we can now make that a drawing line and a dash line, and I'll choose that one. Okay, we'll also make that dash line black so it stands out. Oops, wrong one. Undo. Select the inner one, make it black, the line, make it a drawing line, and also the forced stitched or the dotted line if you want the one we use for scoring. So you then repeat that on each of your pieces. Okay, so what you would need to do then, if you bring in your base card, what you're looking for, if I'm just going to select everything on the dog initially so that I can, in fact I've got that selected, I'll just move that out of the way. Select everything on the dog initially and group it, because we are probably going to resize the whole thing now. So once we've got the base card in, we know now that that is going to make, when it's finished, roughly a 5.5 6 by 6 inch card, roughly. Bring that in, and what we're aiming for is the dog to be sitting with its leg, front leg on this panel here and its back leg on this panel here. Now as you can see at the moment he is a little bit big, so I'm going to shrink him down, but because now it's shrinking him in proportion, it's making him less long. That's not a problem, because all I will do is just elongate him a little bit, and that'll stretch his head out a little bit, but I'm not too worried about that. Alright, so now that's where we're up to. So I'm just going to shrink him down just a tiny little bit more. Now, it doesn't matter if his head sort of hangs off this edge here, as long as the legs are not on a fold line. Ideally don't want the ears to be touching a fold line either, because what you will do is once you've got your base card made, you'll do your folds and you'll hold your dog up to your base card flat and work out where you need to score your dog, and you'll score your dog once he's fully assembled. Now once you're happy with the size of him, you can then edit and ungroup all the parts so that then you can cut those individually. Then what I suggest you do is you carefully drag off. I've just undone that because that was actually, should have grouped. If I forgot to mention, actually I'll do that now. If you do decide to go with doing the forced stitching, please make sure that you group it before you move it, or you'll do just what I did and move it along. So I've got it there. Put all light colours together so that you can arrange your mat to make the most of your cutting space available. Okay, so that's it for the Dachshund or the sausage dog. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's quite easy to put together. You just paper piece in, you make yourself a greeting, whatever, And like I say, it makes roughly between a 5.5 and a 6-inch card when it's folded. Okay, so if you have liked it, please give me a thumbs up. Leave any comments below. Please do subscribe and give me that thumbs up, that like, if you will, because it is really helping to grow the channel, and we are growing slowly, which is very encouraging, and the support that I'm getting from my existing subscribers is absolutely brilliant. So I do thank each and every one of you for coming back to my channel and viewing my videos. Okay, so that's it for now. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.